All right, welcome back to Cooking with Doc. Today we're going to make something called tortilla. Now that's not the thing that goes around your burrito at Chipotle. That's a corn tortilla. This is what's known as an egg tortilla or a potato tortilla. It's a very traditional dish from Spain, and it's one of my favorite things we ate when we were over there. So let's talk through ingredients first. I have 2 small onions. I have 2 decently sized potatoes, and I have 6 eggs. And in terms of hardware, we actually need 2 pans. One that's a little bigger, and this is like an 8-inch pan. This is the pan we'll be making the tortilla in, and I'm melting some butter in here. I got some olive oil heating up on pretty medium-low heat over there. I also need 2 bowls. This one, I have the eggs in, I'll be mixing the eggs up, and this one's you see it's a metal bowl, it's heat proof. This way, I'm gonna have to be draining stuff out of the fat here and the fat, oh, can't see that, the fat here and the fat there. So I don't wanna melt any of my other bowls. And finally, we need some sort of strainer. So how do we do this? What we're gonna do is essentially saute some onions. We're going to poach some potatoes in olive oil. And what that lets us do then is when we add that to the eggs, we kind of make this kind of sort of like a quiche or something more like that, where it's a lot of filling and some eggs, and but it's all cooked on the stovetop, which is pretty cool. So I'm gonna peel and I'm gonna slice these 2 onions. And you might have noticed to peel the onion, you take the either end off, and you got something. You got kind of an onion there, and I'm just gonna slice it along the cut end. It doesn't actually really matter too much. So we'll get this sliced and into this pan with butter, which is on medium-low heat as well. We need this to cook kind of slow. We don't want to get color on the onions, but we want them to be completely cooked through. So one way to do that is kind of doing it over low heat. Another way to do that is adding salt to what's going on here. Which we will do once we get the other onion in. So for a little more detail on how we cut that one, we have the root end, which we take off. We have the stem end, which we also take off. Then we'll cut just in half and take the skin off. Take the skin off. There we go. And we'll just slice into, I guess these are like half moons. Which will then cook in our butter, and I think I'm going to add a little olive oil to that butter as well in a second. In Spain, they don't cook with a lot of butter. They cook with a decent amount of olive oil, and I had some butter handy, so I was going to use that, but I don't think I had enough handy. So let me add that. We want that to cook down. After that, we'll add our potatoes. You might be able to hear that the oil for my potatoes is kind of popping over there. Mrs. Doc and I like this dish. We eat it most Saturdays. I'm taking some skin out of my pan, some onion skin. But it does use up a lot of olive oil. But you could actually reuse that olive oil if you strain it when you're done. So that's what this popping is over here. This is actually olive oil I've made this dish with before. It obviously has some liquid in it, so it's popping a little bit. To this onion, we're going to add a good pinch of salt and some pepper. That's really kind of all you need, and a little bit of sugar. All right, so what the sugar will do, it'll amp up the sweetness in those onions, which is kind of a part of the flavor of this dish. I'll give this also a little toss and put that over kind of medium heat and let that cook. All right. Once we get that, we got to peel kind of 2 large potatoes over here. And we've peeled potatoes before, but we'll just take either end off. Gives us a flat place to peel. And again, you can use a peeler. You can use a knife like I'm doing here. Whatever peels the potato for you. I really very much like yellow potatoes. I find they taste nice and they peel good. You see we have a little bit of kind of rotting here. We can just cut that out, which is the good bit about potatoes, is that the stuff that you can't eat is visible. So there's never any real surprises. Just cut out the those parts. So I got my onions. They're heating up. I can see my oil bubbling a little bit. And we want to get those nice and soft. All right. So I cut some rotten part off a potato, and we'll peel this potato. So this is it's a really easy meal. In that it's a couple of ingredients that you probably have at hand at home. You know, you might not always have potatoes. I know I don't always have potatoes. But the eggs and the onions probably are floating around the house. So it's nice. It's something to make, you know, weekend kind of for brunchy, or like, you know, if you want to, you know, if your parents are out and you got to cook for your family or something like that. It's a pretty easy meal. It's pretty healthy as well. A lot of protein. So, I'm just going to give these a stir. And now here's the key with the potatoes. There's a good bit of olive oil in this other pan over here. This one. Can't see it. There we go. This one. We want to make sure all the potatoes are covered in olive oil. They're not just sitting in olive oil with like a top open. But we need to make sure that they're submerged in oil. And we're just going to poach them, which means they're cooked through, but there's no color on them. So this oil needs to be pretty low. I have it on medium-low right now. And we want to slice these potatoes kind of in as small chunks as we can. So I cut it in half. Then I'm going to go in a quarter. Right? And then each of these quarters, I will cut into really thin slices, as thin as I can get them. Right? And the reason we go for as thin as possible is we want a good amount of potato in the finished dish. It gives the dish its structure. But also, we want to make sure the potatoes are cooked all the way through. So, rather than using more potato, we want to kind of cut these as small as we possibly can. And I'm not sure if you can see that in the camera, but this thing's actually see-through. Like, you could see my finger behind it. So you want that thin on the potatoes. And they go in the olive oil, which is too hot. We're going to get that off the heat. Right? That immediately started bubbling, so I know that's too hot. I'll get that off the heat. Now let me slice the rest of this potato. So, where did I learn how to make this? When Mrs. Doc and I were in Spain, we went to a place that won the best tortilla in Madrid. And I made them let me in the kitchen to see how it was done. I mean, I'm not really sure how I did with my limited Spanish, but they did let me in the kitchen. They let me see how this was done, and this is exactly how they do it. So if any of you are of come from Spanish culture, and your family does this a little different. This is where I learned how to do it, so that's the recipe I'm making, and I bet you your recipe is delicious as well. So again, we're just going to slice these into kind of as thin as I can get them. Not necessarily as thin as I can get them, but, you know, reasonably thin and uniform, so they're all done at the same time. So they're all done at the same time. Alright, and this olive oil looks like it cooled off, so I'm going to move it back over onto the heat. So I think one of the things that kind of most excites me about food is trying... Oh, that piece is way too big. Just cut that into chunks if you get a slice that's too thick. It's just trying new things, and especially when something new surprises you. And this recipe really surprised me when I tried it. It seems so simple, but it's so delicious. So let me just finish up the rest of these potatoes. Alright, so we'll get those in our olive oil. I seem to have dropped one into my onions. That's okay. We'll fish it out. I seem to have dropped a few on the heat over here. We'll grab those as well. So, got these potatoes in the olive oil. Some are thinner, some are thicker than others. It's not my best knife work, but, you know, that's why I'm a math teacher. And just try to spread them out as best as possible. And I'm noticing that there's not enough olive oil in here because I have a good bit of potato sticking out over the top of it. So I'm going to add some more. And what that's also going to do is it's going to kind of drop the temperature of the pan, which I said before was a little too hot. So that'll drop it and it'll be a little more reasonable to cook. And I'm going to add salt to this as well. Potatoes are desperately in need of salt. You should always probably use a little more salt than you think you should. I mean, don't go crazy, but a little more is probably better than a little less. Okay, so I'm looking at my onions here. They're starting to get a little color on them. I don't really want color like that, so I'm going to turn the heat down there, and I'll let both of these cook. And I'll crack my eggs. So when you crack eggs, you always want to crack your eggs on a flat surface. When you crack the eggs on like the corner of a bowl like this, what it does is the shell will go into the egg, and you can introduce bacteria. Normally that's not really that big of a deal if you're cooking it, but you'll see when we cook this, like we don't actually cook the eggs all the way through. So you want to be kind of as careful as possible. Then again, what is likely to live on these eggs, if any kind of bacteria, would be salmonella. But these eggs are, and almost probably the eggs at your house as well, are pasteurized. So they're heated, so there's kind of very low risk of foodborne illness. Now, if you live out by a farm and have you know, fresh eggs from chicken, like then you got to be a little more careful. But you know, pretty much anything in the supermarket will be fine. So I got another potato in there. That's okay. No, that's a big onion. That's fine. So these eggs are these are almost done. The potatoes are cooking, and we're going to whisk our eggs up. And again, we're going to add some salt and some pepper. So add some salt to my eggs. Add some pepper, and we'll whisk that up. Doesn't have to be. We're going to mix some more in a little bit. We just want to break it all up. There we go. Now it's all broken. You can have a peek. You can look. These onions are done as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my sieve into my metal bowl just to sieve out all the fat from those onions and to let them cool off a bit. Okay, to let them cool off a bit. This little pan that I cook the onions in is the pan that we're going to make the tortilla in. So that's that pan we want to kind of keep around. I'm going to keep that off to the side. I'm going to give these potatoes a little stir. If you cut the potatoes thin enough, they do cook faster than the onions do. So that's a good thing. Once your onions are drained, they still got some heat in them, but not enough to keep cooking these eggs. So I'm going to just add them to the eggs. All right, just add them to the eggs. And I'll just give it a little stir around. That'll help everything cool off. We want everything kind of cooking in the pan, not in the bowl, right? And the heat from these onions can start to cook these eggs. Give this another little stir. I'm going to try one of these potatoes. So it's good to try to find maybe like your biggest potato, the one you did the worst job cutting to be the same size of the other potatoes. And if that one's cooked, they're probably all cooked. I can feel with my spatula that we're not quite there yet. So I'll give this another minute. So there's one more piece of hardware we might need for this, depending on how good your pans are and how gutsy you're feeling. You might need a plate to turn the tortilla out on. So we're not going to do that on the video, but we might. You might want to do that at home. So I'm giving these a little stir, and I'm going to grab what I think is kind of my biggest piece of potato, which looks like this guy. And now this is, it's been in hot oil, so this is going to be real hot. So I'm going to come over to the sink, put some water on it to cool it off. And that's still pretty crunchy, but we're getting there. So as this cooks, we can talk about some things this would be nice to serve with. So in Spain, this is it's normally like a snack, a tapas, right? So you would eat this, in the afternoon with a nice big piece of bread. It's also often served like as an appetizer. Mrs. Doc and I do it for brunch on Saturdays. There's a lot of different kind of uses for something like this. It's actually pretty good. You'll see it once it's done. It kind of holds its shape. It's pretty good to cut wedges out of it and like bring for lunch at school or at work. Or even you can make a sandwich out of it, really, if you have some decent bread. I served it for Christmas Eve this year, actually. So a big one. I did like a 12-egg one. And it like scales up pretty nicely, right? So we saw today 6 eggs, 2 potatoes, 2 little onions. You can use 2 little or 1 big onion. You could also do, I did 12 eggs and just literally double everything, and it works out nicely. So these potatoes are almost done. So what I'm going to do is I'll drain them, and I'm just going to drain them into the same bowl we had before with the sieve over it. If you're doing this at home, you might want to do this over a sink so you don't make a mess. But, with my low budget setup here, that wasn't going to happen. So that's hot. That's good though. And now, while this is draining, we have this bowl of olive oil. And a little bit of butter this time, but this bowl of olive oil. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a little bit of this olive oil in the pan. We need that. It adds flavor. It's also going to help everything kind of come out nicely. So I'm going to add just a little bit of this olive oil so it covers the bottom of the pan. But I want it to cover it completely. I don't want it like a thin coating. I want to make sure it covers the pan completely. And I'm going to get that over the heat, and I'm going to turn the heat up to like medium-high. And what I'm going to do now is add my potatoes to the eggs mixture I made before with the onions, and have this all get whisked together. That's hot. Right? And the final texture you want is, it seems kind of very chunky, right? There's a lot of potatoes in there, not a lot of like loose egg, which is the texture you want. And once that gets all mixed up, my olive oil is hot. I have onions stuck to my spatula, my whisk. Right into the pan this goes. So when it goes into the pan, we want it to keep moving because we want to cook this. We're cooking this completely on the stove top. So I'm making a mess, but don't tell Mrs. Doc. And we want this to kind of keep moving. So the bottom might set up right away. We want to kind of turn it over and turn it over so we can get raw eggs onto the bottom of the pan so they heat up. We want to keep turning and turning and turning, right, and turning. So let me clean up my mess. Right, this is the issue with electric cooktops. Turning and turning. And you do really very much want the interior of this to still be kind of wet. But we do need to cook some of the eggs. And right, that's been on for like a minute. And we're getting close. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to let a little bit of the bottom set up. So we have a little platform there. And now is when you could use your plate, put it on top to flip it over. But we're going to see how good I am, hopefully. And we're going to try to flip this thing through the pan. Kind of half the battle here is just having the guts to do it. So 1, 2, 3, here we go. And here's our tortilla. And once you flip that over, this is going to be done in like 30 seconds. You just want to use your spatula to kind of go around the edges. There's enough heat in the pan to finish it up. And just shape it. Kind of push it towards the middle, set up an edge. And once you do that, this is done. So we have a Spanish tortilla here. Traditionally in Spain, this is eaten at room temperature. All right, so you make this kind of throughout the day, early in the day, and you can serve it throughout the day. I actually really like it hot, but I'm kind of weird about hot food. I like my food as hot as I can get it. So this is a Spanish tortilla, one of my favorite meals, and I hope you enjoy.